A lot of sports personalities had a lot to say across social media, quotes, interviews, all in regards to Trump's executive order on the Muslim ban that was trending over the weekend. The same ban that sent about 20,000 Los Angelinos to LAX to protest. The worst place in LA by far is where we all went. And I don't say we, I was not there. Not that I even have a good excuse to not be there. Regardless, you were there, which is nice. Here's some pictures of Francis at the protest. Lots of signs, lots of...
it was a lot of fun.
Lots of celebs.
Well, that's the thing is, like, we just talked about it off camera. When you have large majorities of the country voluntarily going to airports, you know you've got a problem. Like, it's usually... I avoid
one of the
this
five worst airports in the country.
Yeah, undoubtedly the worst.
Statistically.
Yeah, LAX specifically. I've had many of horrible occasions.
We're not
there.
flooding Burbank Airport.
Bob Hope!
It's just Bob Hope Airport is shut down for the weekend, and it would cause no problem at all. All right, so let's get into it. We'll start with Greg Popovich, and we'll move through all of these first. As Popovich has been saying this for a while, very critical of Trump all throughout his couple months that he's been transitioning, and now the President of the United States. As you already know, I have a lot of thoughts about what we've done to ourselves as a country and what we've allowed to happen, but we'll see where this goes. Obviously, the rollout today was Keystone Cops-like by any measure with objectivity. Whether you want to say it's good or bad is irrelevant, but it was Keystone Cops, and that's scary. Keystone Cops, for those who don't know, and editors, I guess, can throw in a picture. It's a silent film group that had to do with completely incompetent police officers. That was the point that he was making. All right, Ronda Rousey next. Steve Nash, Michael Bradley, Thon Maker. So Ronda Rousey took to Instagram, and obviously give us your tired, give us your poor. That offer might vary depending on what the President of the United States wants to sign into executive action. Steve Nash, Freedom and Liberty packing up their things. Michael Bradley had a lot to say, U.S. men's national team captain. A few hours ago, he gave an interview to Grant Wall. After 15 minutes of interview that was centered around soccer and our national time, he asked me about my thoughts about Trump ban of Muslims, a very fair question. He goes on to say later, when Trump was elected, I only hoped that the president would be different than the campaigner Trump, that the xenophobic, misogynistic, and narcissistic rhetoric would be replaced with a more humble and measured approach to leading our country. I was wrong. And then lastly, Thon Maker and other NBA players like Luol Deng were getting back into the country, especially if they're playing in like Toronto, because we forget it's a different country still, Canada. Thon Maker is back in the country. Luol Deng is kind of going to be in limbo when it comes to when they go to Canada, what will happen. We're sure the NBA is on top of that given how progressive they are, but something to consider with the athletes that aren't from the United States.
Yeah, so we don't want to bring this to light through the sports realm, and it means to diminish all of the other people that are going through such horrible circumstances at the moment, such as the Iraqi translators that were held at JFK. Like, it doesn't mean that they aren't of importance. We're a sports show, so we feel it's important when sports people speak out, because it does speak to the mass. Take a look at Colin Kaepernick's efforts, and that will introduce you to how powerful your speech can be, who, by the way, was out protesting at San Francisco Airport. Good job, Kaepernick. So, but there's a lot of people coming out about this and speaking, right? So you mentioned Ronda Rousey, who's very active at the moment. She's stated that she's going to go to Standing Rock.
Yep.
Ryan Harris, offensive lineman for the Steelers, who is a Muslim American, has basically said that this is a hate-filled proposal. Now, I was at LAX, as I mentioned, and to digress away a little bit from sports, it is important to understand the actual logistics, right? And I felt that whilst there's a lot of people out there protesting, there was a lot of people that were just uniting together to show their support, but also weren't as clear with what is exactly going on in the matter at hand. And I don't think that's a problem. Like, people will still want to show their support and feel that it is a hateful rhetoric that's been pushed forward, and that's understandable. Now, it's a ban preventing people from 7 specific countries, right? 7 specific countries that obviously don't contain those that Donald Trump has business interests in, such as Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or anything else. And of those countries that actually, when you're using the example of terrorism that has happened since 9/11 moving forward, no one from those countries have actually committed those acts of terror. It's people coming from Pakistan.
Nobody from those countries has committed a fatal act.
No, I mean, I don't mean that they've not committed acts of terror. I'm talking about the broad example from what Donald Trump referenced was like Orlando, where there's a guy who was born in New York, or San Bernardino, where it was a U.S. citizen and a Pakistan.
Right. That's
what I'm saying. It's convoluted.
Not trying to nitpick, but in a time where every little detail does matter, because when you talk about it and you see it on social media, things get shared that aren't necessarily true. And while I wholeheartedly disagree with the Muslim ban, I also wholeheartedly disagree with even little things slipping through the cracks. And it is important to note that no fatal terror attack, and it's just a matter of...
No, I understand that.
You're
It's
not
just
wrong.
when
It's
you
just a
see
point
people sharing things like, there was one tweet that I said that if there was a Muslim ban in place, San Bernardino wouldn't happen. Well, yes, it would. Because the
Americans can't protect themselves from themselves.
Exactly, and also the immigrant that you're claiming came from Pakistan. So that's what I'm saying. It's these little details that you have to understand, that of these 7 Muslim countries, or predominantly Muslim countries that you're banning from, you need to understand the fine print. You need to understand what exactly you're imposing here. So it is important for athletes as well to speak out when they feel like they're obliged to. I'm not going to hold every athlete accountable. I've never been for that. If you want to use your platform to speak out, the only thing I will ever say is be consistent and be active. Don't speak out once in a while and then suddenly fall back and be like, I'll let things mellow over. That's why I was so pissed off when people were against Kaepernick and then came back when like Terence Crutcher happened or other police shootings happened. They never said anything. That really pissed me off, because if you're going to speak out against something, continue. So if you're going to speak out against this, then continue and be active and promote what you believe to be the right thing, because there's so much... The reason why these convoluted facts are out there, Jason, which is to go back to that previous point, is because it is a sense of naivety from the people who are imposing the ban. People inside Donald Trump's close party said that it didn't affect green card users. And then someone inside Donald Trump's party said, yes, it did affect green card users.
Well, that's because that's Steve Bannon, who's drafting a lot of the legislation.
So, but I'm saying, so it's so convoluted, they're not even able to distinguish between what is categorized as able to come back in, green cards, visas. Like, I don't think they even are aware. Like, I am speaking firsthand as for someone who's went through the rigorous process to get a visa.
Oh, you mean the how long you're going to be here for?
Yeah, well, not
That's what they
just
ask
that.
you.
Yeah, basically,
they
how
want to know
long,
when you're leaving.
I've told Jason every time I come back into the country, and I'm white, I understand I don't have the same level of scrutiny, and that's what I talked about before. But I'm asked every time I come back in the country. So you're going to be leaving, right? This is your date. You're leaving. When are you heading back out?
2019, 2020. When are you going home?
So, and another thing to finalize my points on this, the US already has one of the strictest vetting processes put in place coming into the country. I took a stop off in Paris before I came back to the US, and I was sat and grilled for 2 hours because it was during the time where Paris was under attack and there was a lot of things going on. I was asked, but again, as I mentioned, that's what broke my heart, because I was thinking about my scenario, and obviously I wasn't as intimidated as what people would be in that situation. So I thought about it and I said, what about those Muslims that are detained? What kind of questions are they being asked? Well, how much are they being pushed? Because we can't see in there. We don't know what's going on. There's rumors going around that they're asking about their political views. So not only are they going to be detained based on their religious beliefs, but who do you support? Who did you vote for? Do you believe voter fraud's a thing? Like, these are sort of questions that actually could be asked forward, and as you mentioned, a witch hunt. So my heart firmly goes out to it, but I also am in agreement with Jason. Do the research, figure out what the process is, but regardless of what, there is some facts that have to be distinguished, but when you start to impose a ban like this based on flawed logic, then are we going to start to ban beds? Because more people have died from falling off of their beds than have died from immigrant terrorist attacks from any of these countries that people are mentioning on the ban.
There's a bunch of stats on it. I could say that I'll leave it at this. The thing that scares me the most is the fact that you read in the Washington Post today, and also backed up by a magazine called The Week, which kind of puts a lot of different sources together. They lean a little bit on the conservative end of things, but they still lump all of news into one magazine and quote from those different pieces. And they said that there was members of Trump's team flying back from Miami, Florida, as they were discussing the Muslim ban and what they wanted to be a part of it, as they turned on the TV and saw him signing into executive order what they were discussing, his advisors, some of his officials. That's scary. To me, that's scary just because that means the people he's surrounded by, who, in my personal opinion, are not necessarily the best people to be running the country, aren't even necessarily in his ear. So it's just be aware. You have to. There's no such thing as trust the news anymore. You have to actually cross-reference what you're reading at this point. So take every source lightly. Make sure you distinguish the difference between commentary and breaking news, the difference between commentary and reporting on news, because there's a huge difference. and come back for more, hopefully sports-related content on a happier note. At Francis M. Maxwell, right?
On Instagram, yeah.
Got it. That's all that matters. There's some pictures. You
Pictures
met
of
the Orange is New Black.
Yeah, Matt McGorry and Kendrick Sampson, the activists who, that's what I like to see, because last point, when you see the award shows that are just constantly filled with the political agendas, and I agree with freedom of speech and I agree with putting it forward, but as I mentioned before, consistency. Like, are you speaking out and are you looking into ways to donate to one of the lesser promoted speeches of the SAG Awards was from the actress, I'm forgetting her name, who was part of the O.J. Simpson show, who won Best. And the one thing she said on it was, by the way, if you're outraged, can you donate to the ACLU?
LU, yeah. Who has they have some power. Good job. All right, comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.